everybody, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be bringing you my month in review for March. In March, I read a grand total of 17 books with an average star rating of 3.76. A rate out of 5 stars, 3.76 is pretty good. And this is probably because I had 5 books that I rated a 5 out of 5 stars as my top of the month, but then I did also have 4 books that I rated 2 out of 5 stars as my least favorites. Let's start with the good stuff. The first book that I rated a 5 out of 5 stars I read at the very beginning of March, and that was 100 Sideways Miles by Andrew Smith. I was already a big fan of Andrew Smith for his winger duology, and 100 Sideways Miles definitely leans a little more towards winger than it does to some of the other stuff that I've read by Andrew Smith. It tells the story of a young boy who, after a freak accident in which he is now an epileptic, he sees the world and time in terms of how many miles the Earth travels per minute. It's sweet, it's also heart-wrenching, and it was a wonderful piece of YA contemporary fiction, and it is also extremely short, so if you ever get the chance to find it, it's not a long read. The next book that I rated 5 out of 5 stars was The Girl Who Raced Fairyland All the Way Home by Catherine M. Valente. This was the 5th and final book in her Fairyland series, and it was such a wonderful conclusion to this truly magical young reader series. The writing is absolutely stunning. I mean, truly stunning. And the characters are all wonderful, and there's an element of whimsy and charm, and yet just the right amount of darkness that it fulfills everything you ever want in a good fairyland story. The next book I rated 5 out of 5 stars was The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. I picked up a copy of this book at the Nova Teen Book Festival 2016 and managed to get it signed by Holly Black, and this was the first book of hers that I ever read that included the Fae. It was a wonderful story, it had a couple twists and turns that even if I saw them coming, they were come at from an angle I didn't necessarily anticipate, and I really, really loved this book. The next book I rated 5 out of 5 stars was another book that I picked up at Nova Teen Book Festival, and this was These Shallow Graves by Jennifer Donnelly. I already did a big review for this book, which I will of course link down below, so I won't say too much other than we know I love Jennifer Donnelly, we know I love when she does historical fiction, and this book was wonderful. And the last book that I rated a 5 out of 5 stars was 6 of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I had done way back when a review of the Grisha trilogy by Leigh Bardugo, which I really enjoyed. I think I rated all of those books a solid 4 out of 5 stars. I think I liked 6 of Crows better than the entirety of the Grisha trilogy. And I really liked the Grisha trilogy. There's something about having the multiple characters in 6 of Crows and giving me a really good magical heist story, which I just cannot resist. It was fantastic. I must also say that the audiobook uses different voice actors for each of the perspectives, so if you get the chance to pick up the audiobook, all of the voice acting was on point. So let's move into the not so great parts of the month. The first book that I rated a 2 out of 5 stars was Heirs of Empire. I figured I'd give this a go because it sounded like fun science fiction, and it was incredibly dull. Even though it should have had this kick-ass female character, it was about these two magic twins who are good at everything for no good reason and are spoiled brats, and it was just stupid. The next book that I rated 2 out of 5 stars was The Dark Days Club by Alison Goodman. I did another full review on this. If you really want to see my very honest thoughts on this book, you can watch my video review. Basically, I objected to the main character and the pacing and the writing style, and I really did not enjoy this book at all. The next book that I rated a 2 out of 5 stars was From a Distant Star. This was a weird book in that I already figured I wasn't gonna like it. It was an alien paranormal romance. That was pretty much what it was pitched as, but I was hoping maybe there'd be enough that I liked. And what I found odd was that these characters are 16, and yet they start talking about oh no, this one character's now sterile, we can't have kids. And I'm like, you're 16. You're in high school. Not the things you worry about while in high school. And there were just weird little things like that, which made me think maybe this should have been written as a new adult with characters who were in their 20s as opposed to being written with teenagers, because it just didn't sound right coming out of the mouths of 15 and 16-year-olds. And the last book that I rated a 2 out of 5 stars was Rebel of the Sands. This is a book that had been pitched as this really great Middle Eastern meets Western fantasy, and I found that there was absolutely no plot. The plot showed up in the last 20 pages, and by then this like action-packed finale was so not worth it. It wasn't even worth it. By the time I got to the end, I went, I don't even care. These characters could all die right now and I would not care. Which is such a shame because there were all these great moments where like a completely different story could have been set up and set into motion. It opens in media res and has a gunslinger, and I said you could have done something like in the style of The Quick of the Dead, and you still could have had the Middle Eastern influence, and you could have actually kept the Western genre influence because like it's there and then it vanishes and never comes back, and so I didn't even understand why you bothered in the opening. Needless to say, I thought this book was really, really clunky, and there was insta-love that also made me want to vomit. So, I mean, there's that too. From the writing / blogging aspect, I did write a couple of blog posts that I'll mention here. The first one was called It's All Greek to Me, Misreading the Scorpio Races, which was basically me talking about how the first time I read the Scorpio Races, I thought it was being influenced by Greek mythology, and I was so off base on that because it's actually inspired by Celtic myth. Oh yeah, I messed up, but I at least try to make my case for why I messed up and why I could still logically follow down a Greek path. I wrote another post entitled Fear the Darkling, which was me examining why the romanticization of the Darkling in the Grisha trilogy I find both odd and yet understand, but it's more just saying like romanticizing the villain without being aware that you're doing it, I think can sometimes be a little bit of a dangerous thing. And finally, the last post that I wrote was a really, really long post called The People versus Hades, and it was in reaction to a book that I read called The Immortals. I mean, like, I sort of planned on writing it, but reading The Immortals and the stuff that happens with Hades that I found absolutely offensive, I had to just write this post where I basically talk about the vilification of Hades in modern adaptation, where he gets a really bad rap and it doesn't make sense when you've actually read Greek myth, and I have thoughts and feelings, and they're very much classicist, like me word vomiting Greek myth at you. If you're at all interested, you can go read that on my blog. It's all linked down below. Before I sign off, I'm just gonna give one brief announcement that I will be traveling in the beginning of April. I'm going to be abroad in the UK, specifically in London, from April 8th to April 16th, so there will likely be nothing posted around that week. I've been trying to be good about having at least one video either every week or every 2 weeks. That is likely going to be a bye week. I think I have one that I might be able to schedule in, but no promises. That's it for me today, guys, so until next time, cheers.